we are joined, damn it, there we are, with the man himself, Michael Maloof. Michael Maloof is, let's pull this up. I pulled up the wrong thing by accident. Michael Maloof, he is the former Senior Security Policy Analyst for the Office of Secretary of Defense, author, contributing analyst on RT and other media outlets. He has nearly 30 years of federal service experience in the Department of Defense. Michael, how you doing, man? You doing okay today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
No,
Appreciate
man.
It. I was interested in what Ted had to say. Frankly, I don't see how the Democrats could ever show visibility again. First of all, they're members of, they are officially part of the crime syndicate of Mexican cartels. And if they're saying, trust me, we'll show you that we've changed, that means they get back into power and they revert back to their old ways. No, you cannot trust them ever again.
Trust is hard.
Trust is gone.
Trust is hard. I would tell you this.
4 years to demonstrate, and they did nothing. Now they just need to sit down and shut up.
They did stuff. They lied. They pretended that Joe Biden was the most competent man on the planet. They said Donald Trump was the worst thing in the world, and then did everything in their power to elect Donald Trump. Like, you can go down the list of things. Even her bringing John Pierre, who's apparently leaving the Democratic Party. Even in that speech, she was like, I've never seen a firing squad like this before after Joe Biden's debate. He got more done than any other president. It's like, are you out of your mind? It's like you're still, like, you are hawking a book and lying in the process of hawking your book about a party that you supposedly left. It's just,
she has no credibility.
She
needs to go away.
None. Oh, she's selling the book. She's selling the book. So you're going to see
it's not going to sell. It's not going to sell. No one's going to buy it.
What's interesting, usually when people are part of a political party, the political party buys a bunch of copies. They just hand it out, you know.
The fact that they were involved with the crime syndicates in money laundering, in drug trafficking, in illegal immigration flow into this country makes them automatically a part of the crime syndicate, and they can never be vindicated ever again. They need to go by way of the Whig Party and just go away.
I mean, I agree with you with going the way of the Whig Party. I think both political parties need to go the way of the Whig Party. I think both are trash. I think the leadership of both are trash. So from my point of view, this is not just a Democrat thing. I mean, Donald Trump is out there hawking a coin, using his kids to go around to get billions of dollars for that coin. I mean, let's be very honest about, you know.
Well, I don't dispute he's got issues. I mean, I don't dispute that, but for the Dems to come on and say, well, we've changed, we've reformed, give us a chance where we are part of the we're part of the working class. Look, they're the party of the Ku Klux Klan and Jim Crow laws. Let's face it, they're the ones who pushed segregation, who pushed slavery, and unfortunately, Americans don't read their history. It was the Republicans, believe it or not, under Abraham Lincoln, that freed the slaves. Why don't they? What is wrong with people? Why don't they know their history? They haven't changed.
There's polarity shift that happens, and in polarity shifts, you have political parties that shift their orientation. And so we can talk about stuff that happened.
Dems did not. They shifted all right. They're still the evil doers with different stripes right now. That's all.
Maybe that's why they were shutting down African-American museums. Oh, right. That was Trump. Meaning there's a polarity shift that has taken place within the context of the political parties that you could say that 200 years ago. Fair enough. There's been things that have happened within those 200 years that give, let's say, people a different point of view. Don't get me wrong. I agree with you that the Democratic Party is trash. You have my complete agreement. You even have my complete agreement on this idea of, trust me, we've changed. And by the way, they've never even said that. Meaning Ted's point is they would need to do that. And up to this point, they're like, we just want to move forward.
Yeah, but to do that now, they want to go back into power, but that's all they want is power and control. Nothing else. Agreed. Once they're back in, they're gonna try and hold on to it. You cannot trust them. And I agree with you about the Republicans. At least you see more transparency with Trump. You may not agree with his approach, but at least he's more transparent, and you can call him on it. And he does retract. But you don't see that with the Dems. They're always right. You don't believe your lying eyes. You know,
Yeah.
all of this crap. We heard it for 4 years. Enough. It's like we were imbeciles. And
No,
I
I
was
agree with
tired of
you on
being
that.
talked down to. Tired of
I,
being talked down to.
I agree with you on that front.
But that's not why you have me on.
That's true. That's true. But they do act like they're always right. They act like we're the moral party. We're the, we're the morality, we're the integrity and all this other nonsense. That stuff is nonsense. That stuff is nonsense. They're so full of shit. It's
To
astonishing.
thine own self be true. If you believe only in if you believe in yourself, believe what is true, what is right. You got to have right and wrong. You got to have values. I don't see any values enunciated today by the Dems. I don't see it.
Yeah, I don't see it either.
It's just, and it's very unfortunate. I mean, I used to admire JFK and what have you, but it's not his party anymore. It's just not his party.
No.
It's awful. It is awful what we're seeing today.
Yeah.
And I can't subscribe to it.
No, this I agree with you on. You have my full agreement on that front. I would like to get into Operation Spider's Web, and I want to get into Donald Trump's take on it. I wouldn't give you my take, and I want to get your point of view on my take, because you may disagree with me on my take. I think we are seeing a shadow war. I think the Trump administration deeply wants Vladimir Putin to accept his deal, which Putin would never accept. And so you all of a sudden have bombings, you have attacking civilians in regards to terrorist attacks on train stations. You have the attack on airplanes, which again, from my point of view, are military targets. They're fair game. You had a recent train bombing today that took place a few hours ago. And, as I kept pointing out, the silence is deafening.
Not a military target. That was not
which one?
Military.
The airplanes?
Any of the train sabotages are not military.
Those are terrorist attacks. Agreed.
That's correct.
1,000% agree with you. I mean, the airplanes, those are terrorist. Those are fair game. From my point of view,
but look at the consequences. It may prevent a renewal of the New START treaty, which is up next year.
Right there. Explain why. Please explain to the audience why.
Well, New START requires open exposure of your strategic bombers for overview of satellites, and they have to be displayed. CIA knew it. MI6 knew it. They took advantage of that, and they worked with the Ukrainians over that period of time, then to attack them, to send a message, because the bombers have been used for bombing Ukraine. There's no question about it. But it has far greater geopolitical consequences. We may not be able to ever get another treaty again with the Russians on anything.
Yep. Such a good point. I was saying it yesterday. I said, we leveraged a deal of them, meaning it's almost like I'll be vulnerable if you're vulnerable. And then you take advantage of my vulnerability. And you expect me to come back with some agreement again about vulnerability. It's like, no, dude, that's off the table. It's that.
It's like us and the Dems. I mean, you can't trust the Dems again, just like, and you can't, and from the Russian point of view, I can see it. It was the previous Trump administration that gave up intermediate range ballistic missiles. It made the world, and it made Europe even more vulnerable because of the hypersonics. I mean, they're within minutes. There's no warning time any longer. But yet, why did we give up the intermediates? Because we wanted to install an anti-ballistic missile system in Europe, which was ultimately aimed at Russia, although we claim it was for Iran. Nonsense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, there are consequences to everything we do. We need to be working with people. We have destroyed the element of trust. If there's any message, any theme in this conversation today, is you don't destroy trust.
Why don't they know that though? I mean, shouldn't they know that? Shouldn't they know that? Shouldn't they know that, hey, the Russians are going to assume we were involved in this. They're going to assume that the Brits were involved.
You have to 100%.
Yeah. So
100%.
why would
you don't undertake something of that sophistication and magnitude without outside assistance and overhead and intel? You don't do that. The placements and doing everything on an automated way. Apparently, that's what it was all done by.
Mhm.
The drivers got out, but everything else was automated. You don't do that on your own. It wasn't some ballet star, from Ukraine that was involved. Come on, give me a break.
1,000%. And to make it even worse, as I kept telling the audience, Trump kept saying, I'm going to walk, I'm going to walk, I'm going to walk. If these people can't make a deal, I'm going to walk. Okay. Then the day before negotiations that Trump forced Zelensky to go to, they do this. And so it's like, that's a hell of a risk if you're Zelensky and you are uncertain about what Donald Trump does, or if you're the Brits and you're uncertain about what Donald Trump does after you do this, because a rational person could say, they clearly don't want to deal if they're willing to do this a day before and blow up these trains and murder these people in regards to these terrorist assaults. They obviously don't want to deal. So me, Donald Trump, I'm walking. But Trump didn't walk. And they did it with infinite confidence on some level that he wasn't going to walk.
Well,
which is why
I would assert Trump may not have known about it, because you have the deep state. They are keeping things from him. Look, it took 6 days for him to even become aware that Putin's helicopter was in the midst of a drone attack that was occurring on Moscow. And that came out on the tarmac, and we discussed that. It took him 6 days. It took another 3 days for the Western media to report that Peskov said, no, that was in response, in retaliation for that. What they did to Ukraine was in retaliation. He's being the deep state and the neocons have coalesced to basically set him up for failure.
Then why didn't he walk? Why didn't he walk?
He hasn't walked yet. He had an hour and a 15-minute conversation yesterday.
Putin doesn't care about the conversation. If I was Putin, I don't believe a thing coming out of Trump's mouth.
Putin brought up something that I think is important for the continued more geostrategic relationship between the United States and Russia. And that is, he can help us on Iran. Otherwise, you're going to have the neocons prevail and even Netanyahu and go and bomb Iran. Then we got another war going on. We can't afford it.
To be fair, Trump said it. Peskov, or the readout from Ushakov, never said anything about Iran.
Somebody said it, and Trump said it, but he wouldn't have said it if it hadn't come up in the conversation.
You and I have a very different take on Donald Trump's honesty level. Oh my!
I mean that was a major concession, a major statement. That's one of the things that I thought was very significant in his after action phone call.
Yeah,
that was significant, and because of the influence that Russia has on Iran, it's important. And the Iranians have already responded by saying, "Yeah, we'll work with the Russians on it."
Depends on what that means, though. Iran has already been very clear.
The Russians are building the reactors. They can take the more enriched fuels. They can keep it at a certain level as long as if there's compliance and there's inspections. Then we're back. We're probably going to get back to what was in the original JCPOA, but with a time extension. But at least even Russia and Putin has said this. He doesn't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon.
I think Iran will be okay with that, providing that they still have enrichment, even if it's to the level of 3%. They'll be okay with it.
Well,
but Donald Trump
they're entitled to enrichment because they're a member of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. The reality is that they are a signatory. The Iranians are a signatory to it. They were in compliance with the JCPOA when Trump abruptly dropped out at the behest of Netanyahu, and now you got people around him who are saying we regret that.
Mm-hmm.
I think privately Trump regrets that. Now they could have worked on an extension.
No, please continue. I'm sorry.
There are consequences for these abrupt spur of the moment decisions, And just like with the bombing of the strategic aircraft, somebody around Trump should have, if would have told him this is the consequence. This is what could happen if we go ahead and bomb those open air planes, and because you're jeopardizing something even greater, and that is nuclear stability in the world, nuclear weapons stability. The hope was to try and lessen the number of nukes that each country has. Well, already each country has enough nukes to obliterate the world. You don't need them. But we cut off our nose to spite our face. Why did we do that? That's why I don't think Trump was aware of this.
If that's
Otherwise,
true,
given the ramifications.
Why didn't he fire people then? Meaning, if he's consistent, if for one, I don't think he's maybe they're lying to him on some stuff. I don't think this is too big to lie about in this sense. And the reason why I say it's too big to lie about, Europe is terrified that Trump walks. Zelensky is terrified that Trump walks. They went on a bombing campaign and a terrorist campaign with impunity. And you're not seeing Trump fire people saying, hey, Rubio, how did you not tell me about this? Hey, Kellogg, why didn't you tell me about this? What you're seeing is an information campaign of, oh, right, we need to call Putin to smooth this over to say, hey, man, I didn't know anything about it. Or Kellogg saying, yeah, this seems to be a hell of an escalation, as he hugs Yermak when Yermak comes to Washington.
I have the gift of corporate memory. I remember when Jim Woolsey was the head of CIA.
Yeah,
he told me when I knew him, he told me one time when I was still at DOD, look, I know my people in the operations directorate are withholding things. They're slow rolling me. They're throwing obstacles in my way. He says, I can be the director, but my decisions are never implemented. So I think that this Ratcliffe may be experiencing this very same thing. Why didn't Tulsi Gabbard or Ratcliffe send up the alarms on something like this? This is significant. I mean, yeah, it had a little tactical victory, but the long range implications are astonishing.
Yeah. No, I agree.
And we don't think that way. We don't think in those terms. We only react to the moment.
But they should have. Like,
I agree with you.
The first thing I came to when I realized the New START required those planes to be out there like that. And I'm like, yes. Okay, well, that's over with. That's done. It is impossible for me to keep my planes out in the open when you can attack my planes. And you can give information to who at this point, Putin is calling them terrorists. That he's effectively saying these terrorists have access and are willing to do these things with the U.S. pretending as if they don't know anything about it, or at the very least the Brits are, everybody can assume it's MI6. I guess my thing is that is massive. And if we're trying to get any kind of new deal or anything like that off the table,
I will make a little prediction, just Please. Between you and me, that in the days ahead, Ukraine will be inundated with swarms of Rezhniks as a consequence.
You think so?
Oh, yeah.
I do think that Putin needs to make himself clear and serious in a way.
You'll hear it. I think you'll see it.
Yeah. That.
And this is unfortunate.
Because it didn't have to be this way.
That's correct.
It really didn't. I mean,
there are consequences to every decision that's made. We don't realize that. We don't explore what those consequences can be. That's why Putin is an excellent chess player. Trump has no strategic thinkers in his inner circle. None. Zero. We are in trouble.
Wasn't it John Bolton that didn't believe in treaties? John Bolton's idea was the U.S.
Bolton was one of them, certainly, yeah. But Trump, who didn't know any better at the time, started listening to him. He listened to Netanyahu, not considering the consequences of dropping out of the JCPOA. Some of us predicted that this would be the outcome. Yeah, they have the capability. The Iranians have the capabilities to enrich. They're up to 60%. That's a threshold. It's still a lot. It's still legal because there are medical purposes for 60%. But once you cross that 60% threshold, then it's much easier to go to 90%. They're not there. They've experimented with it. I think IAEA has found some evidence of it, but it's not on any production basis. But they are capable. That is the key. They are a threshold state. How do we diminish that? That is the question. Don't we call in our friends and allies rather than working solo all the time? We need to start doing that. We need to start thinking more strategically, working with the Russians, working with the Chinese. You know, if Iran wanted a nuclear weapon, they could go to North Korea tomorrow and get them. That's not a problem. They could go to Pakistan and get them. It's not a problem. There's a long-standing relationship between Pakistan and Iran.
Yeah. So,
you know, why aren't we thinking in these terms? Why aren't we thinking of cost benefits and costs? You know, we're not thinking that in those terms. And this is why we're getting deeper and deeper into the hole.
You tell me, you were in government. Why don't they think in these terms?
Because we don't have strategic thinkers surrounding the president right now. We've had him in the past, but right now we don't have them. They went away beginning with the George W. Bush administration.
Interesting. I guess
because the neocon influence was we spread the U.S. version of democracy anywhere in the world, even at the tip of a gun, and that's how they believe. Hegemony. That's where, and then using sanctions as an economic weapon. And now you see other countries figuring out ways to get around that as a consequence. We don't think ahead. We just react. And this is our demise.
Do you see that changing?
No.
Not even under the Trump administration. You seem...
He's had a second chance, and I don't see it yet. I mean, why isn't McGregor in a high place? Maybe McGregor feels the way I do. I wouldn't touch a job like that with a 10-foot pole, given who he's surrounded by and who's influencing.
And I'm glad you mentioned this idea of the people who are like underlings and how underlings could somehow slow walk information, not provide information.
It's real.
Don't you put the hammer down in cases like that? I mean, because if you're right,
depends upon the leadership. Under Woolsey, it was Clinton. Clinton maybe had 3 briefings in total from Woolsey. Woolsey used to joke with me and say that I think I told you the other day, that helicopter that crashed into the White House was my 4th attempt to brief the president. It was a joke, but that's how ridiculous it got. He couldn't get in to see the president.
But if you're right and Trump wasn't told, doesn't it make him look like an asshole? Like, meaning, isn't Trump?
It means he's got a clean house.
Exactly, which is kind of my point. That means that Donald Trump, who's the president of the U.S., where the buck stops with, not these underlings, is not given information necessary to run his government in the way that he wants to run.
Right.
And if that's the case, it looks like he has to put the hammer down.
And we're gliding into another war as a result.
I guess I don't get why he doesn't
going into it.
Yeah. I don't get why he doesn't put the hammer down, if that's the case. Like, why they got rid of that Israeli spy that was in his administration. I mean, he shipped him to like Siberia somewhere.
We're not thinking in macro terms. We're not looking at things in a strategic fashion. We're only reacting to immediate events all the time. It's always react. We got to have more strategic forward thinking, and we're not. The Trump administration, even the second one, is not exhibiting that, even though it had a reprieve to analyze and evaluate what it did wrong on the first and see the failures of the Biden administration in between. But now that they're in office, they're reverting back to their old ways. And we see the neocons, whether it's Republican or Democrat, beginning to coalesce, combine not only with the deep state, but also with the mainstream media. The mainstream media is actually helping the neocons and the neoliberals in their ways of trying to set up Trump for failure. This whole all the Democrats' mantra has been anti-Trump, anti-Trump, anti-Trump. No alternative, constructive ideas.
None. Where do you think the CIA fits into this? Like if MI6 was running operations, which I suspect they were, and the CIA were running operations, I suspect they were. CIA have their media contacts. I mean, for God's sake, Operation Mockingbird, they had all sorts of connections in the context of media. You see these quote unquote generals, these CIA spooks that are in media now. Do you think they're involved in also trying to prolong the war, especially in regards to the information that they're dropping to the media? Anonymous sources say. Anonymous sources say this.
And anytime, and this is the fault of the mainstream media, because that source is out of the CIA. They regard that as official, so they're going to accept that at face value, and I know for a fact that that's what happened even to me when anonymous sources would report through Seymour Hersh and those that on stuff that I was doing, and you try to identify who those sources were because their information was inaccurate.
Why do they do that, though? I mean, the media has the. That's
the
thing.
That's the life. Sources are the lifeblood of the reporter in this town.
I know, but I got to be honest. That's the thing that aggravates the shit about me about media in general, coming out the West, and maybe in Russia, but I don't live in Russia.
And look how complacent the press is at the White House briefings. They're all so compliant. You don't see them challenging and going in depth on anything. They all just sit there and ask these stupid little questions that are easy for these.
Well, they act like they only have like a 5-minute memory. I never quite get it.
It's useless. It's just totally useless.
Administrations lie. Why don't they know
both, that? All administrations lie. Trump has real problems internally, and he's not doing anything about it.
Last question. He's boxed in. That's the way you see it. I've heard people make this argument before that Trump is.
And I think he's overwhelmed. He's being attacked from all sides.
Michael, I love these conversations. And even more so when there's a difference of point of view, because it helps me work through my own thought process on this stuff.
Well, I hate to sound doom and gloom, but that's the reality as far as I see it.
No, I don't think you're sounding doom and gloom. I mean, that's the way I kind of view it. I don't know a way out this box. I mean, the reality of it is the man who said he was going to do anything about the war is in power. The guy who's in opposition and all of the opposition is pro-war. It wants the war to continue and just want more money poured into it. It wants to keep going.
Yeah.
And either he knows or he doesn't know, meaning Trump. Either they're withholding information from him or he's running a shadow war. Both of those things suck.
You just had the Europeans agree to another the Germans by themselves agreed to a 2 billion euro increase of defense monies to Ukraine to build factories, long-range missile factories inside of Ukraine. I mean, the Europeans have no intention of a negotiated settlement, and I think Putin has now come to the realization, given the fact that the Ukrainians are also undertaking an insurgency within Russia to attack civilian infrastructure, critical infrastructure. And so consequently, Putin now, I think, has come to a conclusion that the only solution to the Ukrainians' problem is a military one, not a negotiated settlement.
One last question before I let you go. I was having a conversation with Jeff Rich earlier this morning, and he made this point of saying that either Trump needs to get the Europeans somehow, put them in their place. Otherwise, these negotiations are pointless. Because, as you point out, they're like, hey, we're going to build factories inside of Ukraine because if we fire the missile, we're scared that Russia's going to hit us. That's the way they're thinking. It's like, yeah, you should be scared that you're going to get hit if you fire those missiles at Russia. And you get, Root continuously saying, well, during the peace talks, that's when we'll put in troops in Ukraine. And it's like, okay, dude, are you they're obviously taking every action that they could in order to destroy any notion of the negotiations, even these quote unquote negotiations.
It's purposeful. It's purposeful.
Exactly. Does Trump have the power to put Europe in its place on this, or not so much.
No.
They're their own actors.
No, they're off on their own tangent. Listen to Merz. Merz on his own, the new German chancellor, was the one who said, we've all agreed to new long range, taking the limits off of missiles for Europe. The United States, I didn't hear one word from the US or even from the Brits or the French on that, but it was the Germans. Now what the Germans are trying to do is trying to come out and be the major military influence throughout Europe. I think Merz is trying to undermine Macron, who's weak internally. So we're seeing a battle among them. I mean, it goes on and on and on. You gotta peel that onion and see what the basis of all this is. But the Europeans are on their own tangent. They're advocating more military assistance to Ukraine at a time when Trump is trying to get a negotiated settlement. What does that tell you about our own allies? They are undermining him. They are throwing obstacles in his way, and he doesn't know what to do about it.
One last prediction: does Trump ultimately walk? Does he get sick of all of it? So you're all horrible people. I'm calling it a day.
That's what it sounded like the other day in that Truth Social.
Michael Maloof, the man himself. I deeply appreciate these conversations. Thank you for this. Michael Maloof, he is former senior security policy analyst in the Office of Secretary of Defense, author, and a regular contributing analyst to RT and other media outlets. He has nearly 30 years of federal service experience in the Department of Defense. He's seen behind the curtain. Thank you, my man. You have a good day, okay?
You too, Jamal. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. All right. Fantastic.